pulling together the ideas of this day based off of just like marketing and commercials, or how other people are interacting with each other, getting people candy and roses and doing something fancy. That's all I can even put my mind around what the purpose of this day is.
So this is the story. So we don't know the facts exactly, but we know the story and where this kind of all came from, which is super interesting. So there was a priest named Valentinus in Rome, and so during that time in the 3rd century in Rome, Christians weren't allowed to get married. What's your subject matter for this podcast usually? Or like what's the...
So there's no like main common theme or common topic. My main thing with this is just to have as many conversations as I can with random people or people I know. There are some like planned ahead topics, like for example, I was interested in looking for someone to talk about Valentine's Day. So that's why we're here. And so the topics really range, and it's either a topic that I might have in mind where I go out and I seek for people, or it's just like someone is interested in just being on the show and talking, and then we kind of just have a random conversation based off of that.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm a pastor in the Methodist Church, and we start churches in bars, so I'm pretty different than most preachers. So this is great, and I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share who I am or the church name or whatever. But I'm like, we're definitely a lot more edgy than most churches. So, well, I started it 3 years ago, and we were going really strong, and we had 3 different communities that we were working on, and we had just started a 4th one like last March.
Oh wow!
And then COVID hit and everything shut down. And so we just started doing podcasts and stuff like that instead. Well, we started like in August doing that because I thought, it might clear up. At first, I kind of thought it might clear up, but obviously it didn't. We're still dealing with it. And it's going to be a long time before we even get back into bars and stuff and breweries. Yeah. So I might start some house church stuff or do some other things. But for now, I'm kind of just trying to do podcasts and build up, kind of get to know more people,
Exactly. That's good that just because something like this has happened, that didn't pull the idea away from you. You're just trying to figure out how to work around it.
And it could be a lot better because we'll have a lot more things going on now when we start back up again. And maybe I can help other people start them other places because it's not really about me. I'm just trying to help do some things a little bit different.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you said a church in a bar, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and I've been to some churches that do that, but basically they get a room to themselves, or they kind of like rent out the whole bar or something. We just meet while there are other people there, which means obviously we don't sing songs or preach or anything. We basically we get together and we make meals for kids for weekend meals for kids that get free lunch during the week. We make food for the weekends. We make like 15,000 meals a year.
Oh, wow.
And then we distribute them on Fridays to the kids at the elementary school. And that just covers one elementary school in New Mexico. So it's New Mexico's #1 in child poverty. So we kind of took that on. And then we basically just talk about the Bible. Just open up the Bible and read it together and talk about it and have a conversation. And then we have an open mic after that where people come in and just do their thing. And so it was a really, really cool thing, which I'm excited to get it started again once things open back up. But it's going to be a while, I think, in New Mexico before that happens.
So I have a question. Having a business or having a project or doing something like you're doing right now, how were you able to figure out your purpose or figure out that, hey, we want to help children or we want to like help people, elementary school in New Mexico by making food? Like, how did you come to that conclusion?
That's a really good question. because we didn't know for a while. Like it took that, like that's way harder than it seems, in which you were picking up on, because I basically brought it to them and said, okay, well, if we're going to have a church, and it's mostly people that don't go to church that come to it because it's in a bar. And so then that's the point, is for people that don't go to church. So I was like, you know, what should we do? If we're going to be a church, we need to be doing something for the community and make the community better around us, right? So like, what should we do? And it was like 6 months where we met and we talked about all these ideas and we talked about all these different people we could help. We tried some things out. I couldn't get into the schools. We had tried some stuff with schools. We had tried stuff with homeless folks, and nothing was really sticking. And then I heard on the radio one day, and, you know, we prayed a lot about it and we talked a lot about it every week. And I heard on the radio that New Mexico surpassed Mississippi as #1 in child poverty. So I was like, okay. And so like that same day, this girl texted me and she's like, hey, I heard about, there's this organization that's helping people feed kids in schools. And I'm like, oh, no way. Like this happened on the same day. So I went back to church the next week and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this idea? And everyone's like, yeah, that's perfect. And so I used this other organization to get into the schools, because they're not a church. And the schools are super, like when I tell them I'm from a church, they don't want me going and like, you know, trying to get people to come to my church or whatever. I'm like, you don't have to worry. Like, we're in a bar. I'm not going to we're just trying to help. But they didn't really trust that that we didn't have ulterior motives. So this other organization helped me get into the schools, which was perfect. And so we just made meals and we collected books for their book fair, and we gave like 3 books to every kid in the school. And we got science fair judges for them and a bunch of stuff. So we built a really good relationship with the school once they started to trust us, that we were really trying to help. And churches don't always have the best reputation for stuff, and so we have to overcome a lot of that. But it was super cool.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Like, it's so crazy to think. I know this world is huge, but it's like there's so many different things going on at once, or like so many different group of people, because I've never even heard of something like that. And I heard that there was a bar that offered, like, you know, there was a church inside a bar, or they were having like time together. I would most definitely go check out that bar. That sounds amazing. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, thanks. I really like, it's where I hung out the most, and I play in a band too. And so what I realized was I was having better theological conversations with people at our shows than I did in the church, when the same people would come week after week after week.
Yeah.
And I would never meet new people unless like someone brought their brother, or someone just decided to come check out our church. But when we went to the bar, I'd meet new people all the time and talk to them about all sorts of stuff all the time. Plus, you know, you have a beer or two, you tend to talk a little more, exactly. You know, be a little more open. So, I mean, that really helps too, a little more social. And when people from a church would come, we got to talk a lot about what is it like to be in somebody else's building and somebody else's space, and to be good guests instead of just expecting everyone to come to our house, you know. And so our whole goal is to not ever have a building. And if we do, it would be like, maybe I've been playing with the idea of maybe starting a brewery or something where the profits would go to the church, and we kind of have a home base. But for the most part, you know, we're trying not to have a building and invest in real estate unless there's some good reason to do it. Because I think the days of churches just being supported by the people that come to it are kind of starting to end. And we have to find different ways to fundraise and operate more as a nonprofit than just expecting people to come and give us money. I think times are changing, so we're trying to get ahead of that a little bit and change with them.
I don't know how to really word this question because I'm not really religious. But I guess it's not even that. It's just like, what religion do you preach, or what's the religion that you guys are?
So I'm ordained in the United Methodist Church, and so it's kind of through them, and they're giving us a lot of funding and helping us get started. Mm-hmm. So the United Methodist tradition is what I practice, but it's a very open. The United Methodist Church is very open, ideologically and theologically. So a lot of things. It's not like we're telling people what to think or what to believe. It's much more of a, hey, everyone's on their own journey, and if we can do this together as a community, we can help each other out as we're walking. And so we don't tell people you have to believe this or you have to believe that. It's just very, hey, where are you and how are you? And then how can we help each other like move forward, even if we believe different things. And I think especially with the way the politics are right now and all that, that's a super important thing for the church to do is teach people how to disagree well and talk to people that might believe different stuff. And so it's really cool, like when an atheist or agnostic comes in and then somebody's been going to church 30 years is there and they have a conversation. And, you know, it can be a really good conversation without anyone trying to convince anybody that they're right or wrong, you know. And so we really try to practice that. And I think that's just good skills to have. So it's the United Methodist, which is Christian. It's a Christian denomination.
Gotcha.
But you don't have to be Christian to come. And the open mic, it's like there's not rules or anything. The very first week, it's funny, the first week that we had the open mic, this guy came in and said, I'm known as the dirtiest comedian in New Mexico. And I was like, oh, people came here for church. We have this guy, like, what should I do? And then I was like, well, we're at a brewery. You know, they have open mics at breweries all the time. I'm not going to tell people what they can say or what they can't say, you know, and we'll just let it fly. And it went really well. And I became good friends with that guy. And it was really a cool experience. And a lot of stuff happened in his life that I got to be a part of because he trusted me and we had a good like friendship because I didn't like tell him, oh, hey, can you not do that or whatever. I just let him express himself in whatever way. And I think the church could learn a lot from that. But I wasn't comfortable with it at first. But then I figured out, okay, why are we here? I had to go through all those things in my head. Like, why are we here? What are we doing? Like, this fits that, you know? And so that kind of made the open mic run a lot better.
Now I'm excited. Now I want to go. I can't wait for it to open up again. That's amazing.
Well, cool. I appreciate that. And that's why I know, like, I love the saints, and I've been doing a lot of spirituality stuff and mysticism and studying some of these saints and things like that. And so it's super interesting, especially like with Saint Valentine, because it was a lot of these saints lived like a long time ago. So we don't have really good we don't have really good facts, right? Because they weren't written down that way there, or like there's no printing press to like put the story down. So a lot of it is passed on like verbally and through stories. And so sometimes those stories turn into something, just like when we go fishing or whatever, right? Like our stories change over time. Studying the saints is super interesting because there's a little bit of like mystery in their story, and people have filled in a lot of parts in different ways. And so we don't know exactly what happened, but the stories are good. And those stories live on.
You had mentioned Saint Valentine, or?
Yeah.
See, because like, okay, so kind of bouncing back to like the topic of Valentine's Day, you know, I remember a long, long time ago kind of hearing that there was a reason for this day, but I don't remember what it was or even what it was about. I just remember that there was a reason. But pulling together the ideas of this day based off of just like marketing and commercials or how other people are interacting with each other, it's just like, first things first, like women are apparently the most focused things that day. Like you have to, if you're in a like partnership or whatever, if you're with a woman, whether you're a lesbian or not, you have to go and you have to shower her with gifts. You have to buy her something really nice, or it's just like getting people candy and roses and doing something fancy. That's all I can even put my mind around what the purpose of this day is. So if you don't mind, if you can give me the background story or the importance of the real reason, or not even the real reason, but like the real story.
Yeah, sure.
What's behind it? Yeah.
And so this is the story. So we don't know the facts exactly, but we know the story and where this kind of all came from, which is super interesting. So there was a priest named Valentinus in Rome in the third century. So his name was Valentinus, which was the Roman name, and so during that time in the 3rd century in Rome, Christians weren't allowed to get married, and so the emperor was named Claudius II, and he wanted to go back to the old religion, so they had to shut off Christianity, and so they stopped letting Christians get married, and they started to be really oppressive toward Christians. And so
sorry, quick question.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So for them to stop having Christians get married, was it to kind of stop them from like reproducing because they couldn't have sex?
Yeah, exactly. And because the Christian morals at the time, the rules were you don't have kids if you're not married. So it made the Christians be more celibate. And so that was a big part of it. So they wouldn't reproduce. And that's very smart. And so what he did was he started doing weddings. Valentinus he was a priest, and he started doing these weddings for Christians like underground, which is super interesting because in the United Methodist tribe that I'm part of, we are having conversations and arguments about whether gay, lesbian people can get married and if we can do those services and things like that. And some of the Methodist pastors have been doing these weddings even though it's kind of underground and we're not supposed to. Some of us do them anyway because we don't think that it's right. And so it's a very similar situation to this, where he wasn't supposed to do it, but he wanted to do it anyway because he thought it was right. And so he started doing these weddings for all of these different Christians. And during that time, he tutored this daughter of a aristocrat, like one of the noble, the higher up rich people in Rome. And he tutored their daughter who was blind. And so he was doing these weddings, he was a priest, and then he was also educating this blind daughter of this aristocrat or noble family. They caught him doing the weddings, basically. And so he wrote a note to this daughter that he had been tutoring. He wrote a letter to her, and he signed it, "Your Valentine," or "Your Valentinus," right? "Your Valentine." And there was nothing romantic about it. There was nothing weird about it because we weren't celebrating Valentine's Day, right, at the time. That's how it started. So he wrote her this note, and then they killed him on February 14th is when he died. And so they started to celebrate. What they do with saints is when the Catholic Church makes you a saint, they celebrate your day on usually the day that you died, sometimes your birthday, usually the day that you died. And so they started celebrating his day. And another thing that you have to, in order to be a saint in the Catholic Church, you have to do a miracle. And so he wasn't a saint while he was alive. You're deemed a saint after you die. But his miracle was when he wrote this letter to this blind daughter, she read it and was able to see. So when she got this letter, the story goes, she got this letter, she was able to read it. And they were like, oh, it's a miracle she can see. So that was his miracle, was kind of his last dying kind of thing that he did. And so he did that miracle. And then there's other miracles that they say happened around his grave and stuff, which is very common in the Catholic Church, especially around that time.
Dude, that's so interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. Interesting. So when they have this celebration, I'm assuming when people celebrate saints, do they bring candy and bring gifts and stuff?
Well, that kind of came from the card, right? Like, they started to give each other Valentines because he did the weddings, right? He did these weddings, so he was involved in like the love thing. And I'm guessing some here, kind of reading into it a little bit, but you have that, and then you have the card, which is the Valentine. So they would start to send each other these cards, and then it became kind of a romantic thing because of the weddings that he did, and so then I think the candy and the gifts kind of went from there. because you get a card and then it's like after a while it's like, oh, you have something more than just a card or somebody.
Right?
Is this all or whatever? And so, and probably people just kind of started to do more, and then it became expected, right, to do more. But it came from way back then, and so that's why I think what you referred to about male and female, like, you know, females want gifts, right, and want things. That's just what happened, is that the men did that for the women because that's the way the culture was back then, and then that just became a tradition. You know, they did it for so long. Yeah. But it's actually a religious holiday, you know, comes from the Catholics, you know, remembering the saint, you know, Saint Valentine, and his story, which is a really cool tradition. I like to do that for people's birthday. When it's someone's birthday, I like to like ask them like, hey, what's some of your favorite birthday memories, or what are some stories? Then you hear stuff about them, let them tell their stories on their birthday, which I think is just a really cool tradition. And that kind of comes from the Catholic Church too. But I dig it.
Is there other holidays similar to Valentine's Day where it was originally supposed to be like, it was a religious holiday basically to celebrate a saint? Are there other days like that?
Yeah, well, St. Patrick's Day is from St. Patrick, who he did a lot of stuff with I don't know. I would need to look him up. But St. Patrick did a bunch of stuff too. I'm pretty sure that he was involved with animals and some other things like that, but I'm not totally sure. But St. Patrick has a lot of stories, and that's why they celebrate that on the 17th, right, March 17th. I think it's St. Patrick's Day. That's the only one I can think of, though.
The only one with that holiday, mine is like getting pinched if you're not wearing green.
Right.
Another thing that I know about that holiday is that corned beef goes on sale at Vaughn's for that day. It's so expensive, and it's like really cheap that day. So
then there's All Saints Day, which the day after Halloween is All Saints Day in the Catholic Church, and so Halloween is kind of like All Saints Eve. It's kind of like the Day of the Dead. So we got some other traditions all kind of, that's what tends to happen, is we get all these other traditions and we get them all mixed up, and then we just make a day for them, and everyone celebrates their own thing, you know, on those days. But a lot of these holidays were kind of religious in nature at first, and then people just kind of made them into their own thing, which I think is cool because it gives us a reason to talk about it.